Direct from Wales in the United Kingdom, 100% live, it's Big Fight Weekly with your hosts Chris Hume and Stu Palmer.
I look into the mirror and all I see is failure staring back at me. I hope the light gets clearer, but when you got that voice inside your head saying
and welcome to a special edition of Big Fight Weekly with myself, Chris Hume, and a pioneer, a legend of the sport, Mr. Joe Daddy Stevenson. How are you?
I'm doing good, Chris. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. You know, considering it's a bit late now. Usually I'm having a few. It's about 9:10 at night now.
10 past 9. Okay, all right. I normally go to bed about 9:30 or 10 o'clock. So 10:30.
Yeah, I get up at like half 4 in the morning for work, so I'm usually.
Oh, that's awesome. I get up at 5:30. You get up earlier than me. That's impressive.
Yeah, but it still kicks my arse every morning, no matter how long. I've been doing it for about 18 months when I changed my contract in work, but it doesn't get any easier. It's still like a ball ache every time that alarm goes off.
Chris, life doesn't get easier. We get stronger.
That's a good way of looking at it, actually. I still want to throw my phone at the wall when the alarm goes off. I'm not going to lie to you. All right, I want to start before we get into the blitz of your career. I want you take me back to Joe Stevenson as a kid growing up and how he transitioned from just yourself into a life of mixed martial arts.
Well, I think I went to, I believe, 7 or 6 different elementary schools. Life was complicated because, you know, my parents loved each other, but they didn't make a good team together. And we ended up moving around a lot. And I think my dad ended up being diagnosed with bipolar schizophrenia, and it made it difficult. A lot of things at the house. So coming up in that childhood, and then some crazy things happening to my mom and to family members to where they were out of my life for a little bit. My grandparents raised me. My grandpa for like 3 years. My grandpa was like this amazing hero. He was taking care of my grandma who was bedridden. He was taking care of his 3 grandkids that were living with him. He was a World War II veteran, POW. He was just this hero. He used to wake us up before school. He'd be like, "Wakey, wakey, early bird gets the worm." And it's amazing. You know, I think he's a big reason that it's not easy. Success takes a lot of hard work, you know, unless it's given to you. So you're going to have to work hard. Yeah. And I think that stuck with me. And in junior high, I started wrestling and started doing judo and jiu-jitsu my freshman year, or going into my freshman year, and just kind of ran with it. It was a reason, had a lot of crazy things in my house I didn't want to be around. So I wanted to be at the gym. And that was my second home.
That obviously, with everything that happened, you know, as you were a child and you're growing up, with everything with your parents and then moving in with your grandparents, that must definitely molded you to be the guy that you are now.
Yeah, well, you get to learn a lot, you know, now looking at it. There, like when I'm that kid, you know, you're having to learn from the situation. That's really all life is. Like that's amazing that, you know, a family environment that somebody can take you in that loves you and is going to take care of you and make sure you're okay. But they're doing that while they have all this other stuff on their plate. And that's crazy. And that's what my grandpa was. He was amazing. That helped me where later on, like before high school, or before junior high, I would go to the track and run and then lift weights. And then in high school, I would do that and then do my wrestling practice. And I would do my club wrestling practice. And I would do my club jiu-jitsu practice. And I would do my club MMA practice. And, you know, you put in that time, and the more you're in the sport, the better you become at it.
It seems like you open the doors to yourself, considering with everything going on in your family. would you say that your granddad at that point when you were doing your college wrestling and your jiu-jitsu, he was a major like sponsor for you, like he was there in your corner pushing you?
My grandpa was able to go to watch me wrestle in high school state. In at Masters, I had hurt my ribs pretty bad, so I had to like I think I took like seventh, or I took like eighth, and then going into state, I won my first 3 matches. My grandpa was there to watch. It was the first thing he ever got to watch me do, and I failed both times. I lost in double overtime, and but it was okay because afterwards he gave me a big hug and said, "I love you." And at that point, when my grandpa was, after grandma had passed, I was walking my grandpa to the living room, and I was making sure that if he needed to be changed, he was changed every day by me twice a day. And I would bring his meals out and I would walk him back into his bed. And when he couldn't walk anymore, we used a wheelchair. And he's like a hero. So it was my pleasure. I remember shortly after that, he had passed away the next month. And it was the same month that my dad passed away of like bone cancer. So it was and then I was having a baby come, like, I think.
Christ. So it's like a steam train, really, isn't it?
Later. Yeah. So there's a lot of crazy stuff, but it's what makes us, the stuff we go through makes us, develops us.
I can understand. I'm 36. My best friend was murdered when I was 18, and it set me back a hell of a lot of years, really, because you see it on TV and on movies, say per se, but you never sort of think it's ever going to happen to you, and it really messes with you. And I was a young lad where I'm very outspoken and I don't mind telling you how I feel, but that made me bottle things up. But looking back now, I progressed myself to get better with it. But I had, my friends who were around me at the time who were going through the same situation with him. We all packed together. So I get where things can change you.
Yeah, that's something that like everyone that trains in MMA and jiu-jitsu, they always think that they're going to start here and they're going to go here in a straight line, like bam. That's just not how it is. It's a plateau, valleys. Bad things are going to happen to you, even if you don't bring them on yourself. That's why it's so important to stay out of those bad situations, like where the bad environments. You don't want to bring enough bad stuff is going to happen to you without your help.
Yeah.
You just need to make sure that you're in the best position possibly to defend yourself. And that's what you do in life. So in a fight, I put myself in a good position that if you do something, I'm going to be able to react properly too. And in life, you do that. You put yourself in a position. You don't go take a holiday, and it would be a silly idea to take a holiday and not have a savings if something bad happened to the holiday.
Yeah.
All these things that could happen. But wait a minute, what situation did you put yourself in?
Yeah, I get that. I think it took me a couple of years to sort of find myself again, and mixed martial arts itself as a whole, that I never trained in it because I live in a very, very small village in Wales. You didn't get any martial arts sort of experience or any sort of gyms where you could sort of go to. There was boxing, but it was very.
That's over by Scotland.
No.
Where
Wales is literally, obviously you must know where Liverpool and Manchester. Mm-hmm. So it's basically about an hour drive, and then the country Wales is literally on the left hand side of Great Britain.
So and is Newcastle a little below Wales?
No, Newcastle's right up by Scotland.
Okay, because I fought in Newcastle, so I kind of in Summerlin, and I got those. And so Wales is actually south of.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm just trying to get it mapped in my head. It's like California. It could take you like 10 hours to drive from the top to the bottom of the state. And we take that for granted. We put ourselves in this situation where we're like oh, oh, you could be there in a day's travel. Like, is that how it is in England? Like, could you travel from the top of the country to the bottom of the country in a day's travel, or is this going to take you
A
a lot?
few days, a fair few days, I'd say. So if you started from, like, say, the top of Scotland and made all the way down to Cornwall, like Southampton, Cornwall, which is like, let's say, the last part of UK before the Isle of Wight and then France. Yeah, you're looking a fair few days. It takes, say, if I drove now, say, from where I live in Wales to, say, London, for example, it take about 8 or 9 hours with the traffic. If the traffic was, easy
I
to go
saw
through.
this weird app thing, or not app. It was like it was on like Instagram, like where it was showing cool things on the computer, and it shows an actual map, and it's like, because the map that we look at, the flat map isn't really super accurate as far as like size and proportion. Like Greenland is far smaller than Africa, things like
Mm.
that. So I'm glad that you're telling me this. In my head, I'm thinking that, that, oh, that's the size of California. No, it's much bigger. That's crazy. That is crazy.
Well, it really, as you say, you look on a map, you look at Great Britain. It's like, it's quite. It looks small, but when when you're here, everything is quite. It's massive, really. And you got to look at it like, Wales, and then it's England as a whole, Scotland at the top, Ireland just across the water, and then Southern just below Northern. Yeah, it's difficult. It's you jump from two different languages as well, Joe. So in Wales they speak Welsh. I don't speak Welsh, so I can't give you any help there. And then you obviously go to England, which is richly on the border, and it's totally different again. And then you're judging people's accents as well.
That makes sense. So they can.
That makes it. So like people from Netherlands, that would be Ireland's on the other island to the outside towards America, and then
Yeah.
like the Netherlands and everything, they're inland. How far? What is the widest part of that gap? Because that's the British. What is that? The canal? The canal? Or
What the British Isles?
Yeah.
Well, I think if you look at it, so if you're on the, say, towards London, so you're on the outskirts, you're more looking towards like Norway, and then so there's Norway, France, Belgium, on the outskirts going that way, and then obviously you're going into Germany, and then Netherlands is just like then above that way.
I'm sorry for asking. I go to bed to a lot. Like at night, I'll watch A&E or like the History Channel or like on YouTube.
Yeah.
Things and everything. A bunch of craziness.
There's a message from our good friend here, Don McGuire, saying, "Hello, hey brother Joe."
Hey Don.
And then he's got another question.
Prior, right a second ago with my buddy Stan and some guys with Cold Combat right before. I was like, oh, it's 8 o'clock. I gotta go, guys.
And
I have one of my fighters is fighting in a UK show, right? Cage Warriors.
Good. I see Cage Warriors is popping at the moment. As you can see, the rampage that British fighters had at UFC London back in March. It's something that I hold dear to myself, because I watched. Been watching mixed martial arts from, I don't know. I can't remember the year Chuck and Ortiz first fought, but that's when I first started watching UFC to MMA itself. But I've seen the progression of UK MMA, where they used to come in as bangers, didn't they? And you guys who were solid wrestlers or had the collegiate wrestlers who just take the British down, and they wouldn't be able to get up. What I like is now is just a change.
I think it evolves. I think a lot of it, what we've always said, like, or I thought in this, as we have wrestling in America, whereas you guys have judo, which is where you guys have some submissions, but in judo they're not allowed to grab the legs, to do the shot to take somebody down. That's kind of important for MMA, but your guys' upper body, it's almost like Greco-Roman wrestling. It is impressive, and it helps with your takedown defense and your offense. So there's pros and cons to the styles. It's just probably matchups. It's in judo, you don't want to stay on your back, whereas in like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you can stay on your back and you can work it. But I guess that's a lot more popular over there now.
Yeah,
in the
much more popular, but wrestling's a lot more popular now. And there's a few Welsh guys that are coming through. Jack Shaw being one of them, and he's just, I think he's 16-0, and he's just got to the ranked 15th in the lightweight division. But his wrestling and his grappling is phenomenal, and it's so nice to see that, you know, they're not typical bangers that just come in with power punches. He's mixing it up now, and you know, he's got heavy hands per se, but he likes to grapple, and it reminds me of a very young George St. Pierre. I know it's a big name to throw out there, but it reminds me of how he moves and how he transitions from you know, striking to grappling. Reminds me how George St. Pierre used to set people up very quickly by throwing a feint, get people to bite, and then take them down with a double leg. It reminds me a lot like that. It's good.
So, like, for example, for that strategy, you have to really want to take somebody down for them to be scared of the takedown. And then when they're scared of the takedown, it allows your hands to open up and your kicks. And so do that, all of a sudden, maybe they're a better striker, but because they had to respect your grappling, they lowered their guard, and now you were able to get some effective strikes that maybe rocked them enough that you can get the takedown a little easier. But that also works against you too. Like maybe it doesn't work that way. So there's so many game plans and strategies when it comes to fighting and putting one guy against another guy. It's beautiful. I compare it to like rock, paper, scissors. I figure you have pressure fighters, you have movement fighters, and you have counter fighters. So there's only 3 styles, and they're like paper, rock, scissors. Like pressure fighter beats a counter fighter because they're going on center, and then he moves off center and attacks. That's pressure coming into the counter. The counter fighter meets the movement. He beats the movement fighter. You're moving, and I'm countering by being in position and punching where you're going. And then you got the movement fighter that beats the pressure fighter because the pressure fighter starts chasing the movement fighter. And when you follow, that's when you come into big shots. And then the better guys, they have an understanding of their style and their opponent's styles, and they stay away from their strengths and navigate into their weaknesses. And that's what you get. That's how you get a finish in the sport.
Obviously, you've got children yourself. I have them as well myself. Do they partake in mixed martial arts? Do you bring them to the Cobra Kai, which is an absolutely fantastic name? And I'm sure since the show came back, you must be getting quite a lot of people calling in for that.
Yeah, except for like, you know, it sucks when you get like a Yelp review or a Google review talking about John Kreese, and you're like, what? Like, for sure. And then you contact Google and you say, could you take it off? And they're like, no, that's somebody's opinion. I was like, it's talking about the show. That guy is not here at our gym. Like, that part is not cool. But I guess my son he fought a kid from Tahiti a little bit ago, and that was really cool. He was excited. And he's also competed in the USFL Nationals where he took second. And it is pretty cool. There are some really cool things about I don't want to watch him fight, and it's nerve-wracking.
Yeah, but
I hope that he becomes like a doctor or a lawyer, or he just has fun and just does this for confidence and self-defense. I mean, that's really, you got to know what you're fighting for. When you know what you're fighting for, you can fight better. You can fight harder. And that alone is like priceless. Like me saying, I want to be the best of all time. That means everything I do, I'm going to try my very best to honor that. Whereas some people might put themselves in a situation where they're like, well, I just want to be famous. Well, those guys are fighting for different purposes and can still do it, but they're not going to put their body at risk or their life on the line, things like that.
Don's thrown another message in the USFL with John Frank.
Absolutely.
So that obviously, it's good to see that, you know, the kids, one of your lads is sort of following your footsteps in a way. Obviously, you don't really necessarily want him to go that far with it. I wish my lad would do that, but I can't get him off Minecraft, unfortunately, Joe. He's stuck on that forever.
Those are So when your child wants a privilege, they have to do something to earn it.
Yeah, unfortunately, British kids don't like to play like that. You know, you're in a battle immediately with them, and it's we're going past World War III, we're in World War Ten about when when you sort of clash with them. But that's what British kids are like. They don't give a shit. They just
Well, it's something that you have to make sure it's It's weird. These younger kids growing up, they almost feel entitled, and that's not a good place to find yourself because those people end up hungry. You got to work your butt. Like you really got to earn your place, and that's something that we shouldn't get lost in translation. With everyone gets a trophy, everyone's a winner.
I don't agree with that. Yeah, I don't agree with that.
So
I've always grown up with you have a win or you lose. That's how I was always I grew up with.
Yeah, well, and you had to deal with that reality, and that is why you deal with reality as an adult a little better because you've already come to these bridges and you've understood, okay, what am I doing? Whereas if you don't as a kid and then you come into the real world and you're like expecting, something or a handout, and then you start whining about it, then people like don't want to even talk to you. It's crazy. It's better to go to it earlier than later.
My girls are a bit better that way, but they're all this generation where it's all this, isn't it? It's all this, it's all where it's one of them where you don't want to battle with them, but at the same time you do want to show them a bit different, like the outside world. But we have 3 dogs as well, and my my middle child Lily loves dogs, and it changed the way she does things. Well, when I say we have 3 dogs, I have a bearded dragon, a tortoise, a gecko, guinea pigs. I could go on and on, but she's like mothers them, which is it's really nice to see, and I feel like it's given her some sort of a leadership sort of way.
Sometimes that's what people need. In class, you'll have a couple like problem kids sometimes, and you'll need to be like, wait a minute, if I put this kid in charge of the other kid, that gives them a sense of responsibility, and that can give them something to be proud about. And then you give them a little bit of praise. You're like, wow, you guys did it better than that group. Great job. And all of a sudden, they're coming to practice, and they're on time, and they're working hard. Everyone can be coached. It's just finding out which way to coach them and how they best respond to it. And that's the difficult part. That takes time.
Yeah, I totally agree. Hold on here. Hi, Lewis. How you doing, matey? Thanks for coming. Right. As well, okay. I want to sort of transition now to your
I have about 5 more minutes because I have to pick up my son from school today.
That's not a problem. I'll just throw a few more at you quickly. This is what I wanted to sort of talk about Kingdom. I fell in love with Kingdom. I love the fucking show. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, but I really enjoyed it. I was extremely gutted when the Audience Network decided to cancel it. I enjoyed seeing you there, but there's a lot of you that were in the show. If you're fighting, like Cub Swanson was fighting, wasn't he, against Nick Jonas? How is it being around that sort of scenario? So you obviously becoming an actual fighter, but being in a studio and having to teach the likes of Frank Grillo or Jonathan Tucker or Matt Laura how you do it in the real world.
Well, I mean, anyone can be a fighter. Like a lot of those actors, they're doing the same thing we've done. Like they're eating top ramen because they're chasing their dream. And so, the fighters are doing the same thing, renting rooms instead of having their own place because you can't get a full-time job because you need to be flexible, all this stuff. They're fighters too. And what I did was we went through like a 2-week training course where they developed and they've trained 5 hours a day. And they developed into the fighters, and it was amazing. They were, there was no strings. There was no like, all right, let's start it here. Actually, it was all like shot live. Nick did that flying triangle to Cub. It was really cool because I got to be the fight choreographer and one of the MMA technical advisors with Greg Jackson, and I was able to call on my friends like Diego, Gray Maynard, and Cub, and let them showcase some of their skills. And it was beautiful. I learned a lot actually from the actors, as far as being professional and as far as, really putting everything into it. A lot of those, like I watched them cut like 30 pounds, like 25 pounds to make that character. That's crazy.
I got to say, watching it, and obviously Frank Grillo, great. The guy's been in everything. But Jonathan Tucker stole the show. Every scene he was in, he stole every scene. The enthusiasm and just the character that he made, it was outstanding.
I think the character of Jay begs for everyone to care for him, because you see that he's caring for these people, and sometimes in the wrong way, but you see that he's caring, so you want to care for him. Whereas a lot of the other characters, you see them fighting their own demons, but you don't know where they're coming from. Is it because they care for themselves? Whereas Jonathan, you have many opportunities between his brother, his mother, and his father, and friends, that you see him make a conscious decision of caring, of love. And you're like, wow, that he cares for somebody more than himself. That guy. Yeah, maybe he's a screw up, but it's okay to be a screw up. And I think that's what you fall in love with.
I thought it was just something that we didn't get properly, like a proper show where it wasn't just about fights. It was about the fights outside of the octagon or the cage per se. And I thought everyone sold their story perfectly.
Well, they kind of sold it too good too. I think a couple of the fighters were like, man, I remember being at a couple of the shows and hearing fighters say, yes, that's a crazy reality show. And it's just like, that's scripted, guys. He wasn't a national champ wrestler. They worked very hard to portray that, even their cauliflower ear. But I am looking at the time. I do have to say bye. And I'm wondering, it's got to be late for you too. Now it's like 9:34.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I've just one more question. This is from Don. How does it feel in your heart when Terry Trebilcock inducted you into the Hall of Fame?
That was actually one of the coolest things that has happened to me as an MMA artist. Terry legitimately has been there since I was a little kid. I saw him when I was like 13, 14. And you've got to really honestly appreciate everything he's done for MMA, because he's done so much. He's helped a lot of us in Southern California. He's helped Southern California become a mecca because he provided the ability for us to showcase our skills.
Okay, and obviously Don's last volley here for you, and it's just appreciate. Yeah, and I also appreciate you coming on, Joe. I know you've got to go, so I'll let you go. Hopefully, I can catch you another time, and we can have a bit of a longer interview, and we can discuss how your career as a mixed martial artist. But I really appreciate you coming on and giving me your time. Fantastic to speak to you. Watching you for years on the telly, so I've never expected I'd ever be, sitting across from you on the screen and actually speaking to you. So it kind of blows my mind a bit, but I really appreciate you coming on.
No worries. You guys have a great night. Thanks everyone for watching. God bless.
Take care. Take care. Well, that was Joe Daddy Stevenson. Loved it. Thank you, Don McGuire, for sorting that out for me. I really appreciate that. And then, what an experience. But yeah, thanks everyone who came and watched us and tuned in, sent your messages. I'll get Joe back on another time and get a bit longer of an interview for him. So thanks everyone for watching today's show with me and Stuart, and watching today's interview with Joe Daddy. So thank you very much, and I'll see you next week.